The Unmade Bed, The Messy Truth About Men and Women in the 21st Century, a deep dive. Stephen Marche's The Unmade Bed is not a self-help manual, nor is it a strictly academic text on gender studies. It is a hybrid, part confession, part analysis, part anecdote-rich social commentary that grapples with the unresolved tensions of contemporary gender roles. Drawing heavily from his personal experiences, particularly his marriage to Sarah Fulford, editor of Toronto Life, Marche's book chronicles the shifting dynamics between men and women at work, at home, and in bed. This isn't a tidy manifesto, but rather a meditation on the contradictions of our time, a documentation of the messy, evolving process of male-female relationships under the weight of unfinished feminist revolutions and economic upheaval. The hollow patriarchy. Marche begins by declaring the era of the hollow patriarchy, a reality in which men still appear to hold the reins of power, yet actual influence has subtly and steadily shifted. While men dominate the upper echelons of wealth and political control, women are becoming the primary breadwinners in more and more households. The shell remains patriarchal, but the inside tells a different story. Women are rising, particularly in education and middle-class professions, while traditional male strongholds, physical labor, industrial jobs, are in decline. Marche asserts that this paradox places both men and women in an ambiguous, sometimes contradictory, situation where they must reconcile legacy gender roles with new economic realities. The new fatherhood. Marche's personal turning point comes when he gives up a tenure-track academic position in New York to support his wife's career in Toronto. His transition from scholar to stay-at-home dad illuminates the emotional and psychological toll of shifting gender expectations. He describes the early days of parenting not with romanticism, but with a mix of awe, exhaustion, and existential dread. He doesn't shy away from the loneliness, loss of identity, or powerlessness that came from becoming his wife's wife. At the same time, he deeply values the intimacy of caring for his children. This duality becomes central to Marche's message. Embracing modern masculinity requires grappling with vulnerability and redefining strength in terms of nurturing and support. Sex, power, and the bedroom. Marche weaves in the complexities of intimacy and sex, observing how traditional narratives of male dominance and female submission fail to capture the nuanced negotiations in modern relationships. Pornography, hookup culture, and shifting power dynamics have created a new terrain that can feel liberating, exploitative, or both. He explores how male sexuality, often still rooted in conquest and control, is being reshaped, awkwardly and imperfectly, by rising female agency and voice. He acknowledges that men still hold disproportionate power, but also argues that powerlessness is increasingly a male experience too, particularly in the domestic sphere. The pornography paradox and straight camp. These chapters look at two cultural manifestations of the gender tension, porn and so-called straight camp. The first examines how easy access to online porn has reshaped the sexual imagination, particularly for young men. Marche is skeptical of both puritanical outrage and uncritical celebration. He sees porn as a reflection of unmet emotional needs, a substitute for real intimacy that often reinforces transactional ideas about sex. Straight camp refers to the ironic celebration of masculinity by men who know better, like hipster dads who wear flannel and carry babies in slings. Marche examines how this cultural posture masks the confusion men feel about how to act masculine without being oppressive. These phenomena suggest that men are improvising masculinity in real time, often with absurd results. Against outrage. Here, Marche takes aim at what he sees as the dominant tone of modern gender discourse, outrage. Whether from men's rights activists who paint themselves as victims or from feminist thinkers who frame every male misstep as a sign of systemic oppression, outrage dominates and oversimplifies. Marche doesn't dismiss feminist gains. In fact, he praises them as among the few political movements that have produced lasting change. But he argues that continued gender progress now depends on collaboration, not confrontation. The boys' crisis, the girls' crisis. Marche reflects on education, noting that boys are increasingly underperforming in school compared to girls, and explores how traditional notions of masculinity, stoicism, physicality, emotional restraint, no longer serve boys well in a post-industrial, information-driven economy. Meanwhile, girls face their own crisis. As expectations for achievement rise, so does pressure to be perfect in every domain: academics, appearance, behavior. Marche argues that both boys and girls need new narratives and support systems that acknowledge these pressures without pathologizing them. The Case for Living in Filth. This unexpectedly humorous and insightful chapter explores domestic inequality through the lens of household chores. Marche confesses to his own sloppiness and observes that while men may be doing more around the house than in previous generations, women still carry the mental and emotional burden of managing the home. Rather than promising a 50-50 split, Marche suggests that the real goal is understanding and negotiation, not perfection. Messy hope. Marche concludes with a meditation on the messy hope of gender relations. Progress doesn't arrive in neat packages. It's found in compromise, in shared parental responsibilities, in awkward conversations, and in the redefinition of success, power, and identity. The future, he suggests, belongs to cooperation, not conquest. It's not a gender war, it's a joint project. The Role of Sarah, Marginalia and Marital Truth. One of the book's most innovative features is the presence of footnotes from Sarah Fulford. These comments, scattered throughout the text, provide a kind of counterpoint, sometimes humorous, sometimes sharply corrective, to Marche's narrative. They complicate the story, underscoring the impossibility of any one person fully articulating a shared relationship. In this way, the Unmade Bed enacts its thesis that gender roles, like marriage, are collaborative, complex, and never entirely resolved. Final thoughts. Stephen Marche's The Unmade Bed is a brave, often contradictory work. It doesn't offer clean solutions or universal prescriptions. Instead, it embraces contradiction, welcomes complexity, and invites the reader to wrestle with the messiness of contemporary life. It argues that the real revolution isn't in the streets or even in the workplace. It's in the bedroom, in the kitchen, in the daycare pickup line. It's in the quiet choices that couples make every day, often without realizing that those choices are political. This book isn't just about gender. It's about life in flux. It's about what happens when economic, technological, and cultural revolutions outpace our language and our institutions. Marche doesn't tell us what to do. He simply asks us to look honestly at where we are, how we got here, and where we might go next, together.